Welcome everyone. We are live with another episode of Level Up Law, where every Tuesday at noon, South Carolina Legal Services is leveling up your legal knowledge about an area of law that we practice in here. I'm attorney Susan Ingalls. I'll be in the background with our producer, Kenneth Elliott, from our IT department here at Legal Services. We have a very timely topic today and a panel of speakers on that topic that'll be just great. The new eviction moratorium that is set to last until October 3rd this year, and how tenants can assert their rights, but also information on the rental assistance that's available here in South Carolina. But before we get started with introducing our esteemed panelists today, I do want to remind our audience of a couple of things. This is not legal advice, it's just general information for the public. If you need the help of a lawyer on this or any other subject, you can always call our intake line here at South Carolina Legal Services or apply online. And that information will be provided for you at the end of today's presentation, so you'll have that information. And just so you know, not to worry about furiously taking notes today with all this incredible information during the webcast. So you won't have to just remember it or take notes. All of our episodes are posted to our YouTube channel at South Carolina Legal Services. We have a Level Up Law playlist there. So this recording of today's presentation will be uploaded there probably within the next 24 hours. So now we don't have time today, we don't believe, to take questions because there's so much information. But we do encourage you to put questions in the question box, and we will do our best to answer those in a resource later on that will be linked to that YouTube video for you. So do be sure to check out our social media and get all the information that we provide up to date every Tuesday. Our websites and social media handles can be found on the last slide that we'll show you in today's presentation. So let me introduce our panelists today. Leading off is Mark Fessler. He is our housing law unit head here at South Carolina Legal Services. And then we have Renee Long, who is the communication and outreach director for South Carolina State Housing Finance and Development. We also have Malcolm Clark, senior consultant for state and local government at Guidehouse, and Ryan Mullen, associate director for state and local government at Guidehouse. Welcome everyone, and I'm going to just go ahead and turn it over to Mark to get us started. Mark, take it away.
All right, thanks for that, Susan. Let me go ahead and start showing my screen here. Let's see. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
That work. All right. So thanks for joining us today at Level Up Law. We wanted to pull this together in light of the CDC newly extending their eviction moratorium. We thought we'd tie that in with an overview of rental assistance and specifically how that works through the SCStay Plus program. So I'm just going to talk about what the new eviction moratorium, which lasts maybe until October 3rd, 2021, says and what it can do for our clients and other tenants. So the new moratorium was issued on August 3rd, 2021. And the goal is really the same as the old. It's to suppress the spread of COVID-19 by preventing evicted persons from becoming homeless or because they might be or have to move in with others in shelters or with family or friends. There's research that I don't go into here, but that the CDC's order discusses that talks about how individuals who become homeless or have to move into what are called congregate settings, meaning living with other people, are more likely to spread and to receive the COVID-19 virus. So the order specifically prohibits a landlord or any owner or other person with a legal right to pursue eviction from evicting a covered person. We'll talk about what a covered person is in a later slide. They cannot evict that covered person from any residential, so it doesn't apply to commercial, but residential property, while COVID-19 transmission in the particular state, county, or locality is substantial or high. Substantial and high transmission rates are technical terms that are defined by the CDC, and we'll review a resource that the CDC has where you can go and you can click on a map and see whether your county is color-coded, substantial, or high. So what does a covered person mean? In previous versions of the CDC's order, there were 5 different things that a covered person had to attest to be a covered person. 1, that he or she was using best efforts to obtain all available governmental assistance for rent or housing. So that's kind of a tie-in to what we're talking about next with the SCStay Plus. You have to show that you're trying to get rental assistance from all available governmental sources. 2, you have to attest that you either earned no more than $99,000 if you're a single person, or $198,000 if you file jointly in 2020, or the same for 2021. You expect not to earn more than that. Or you can attest that you were not required to report income, or that you received an economic impact payment, a stimulus check. You also have to report that you were unable to pay rent due to a substantial loss of household income, or a loss of work hours, or a layoff, or an extraordinary out-of-pocket medical expense. An extraordinary medical expense is defined for the purposes of this order as an expense or expenses that are more than 7.5% of somebody's annual gross income. You'll note there that the hardship, the financial hardship, doesn't have to be COVID related. It just has to be a substantial loss of household income for any reason. You also have to attest that you're making best efforts to pay what you can, to make partial payments or as close to the full rent amount as possible, when taking into account your other non-discretionary expenses. So that's things like food, utilities. You know, if you don't have any money to put towards rent, it's not required that you pay, you know, anything really if you don't have non-discretionary income. But if you do, you're supposed to make best efforts to make partial payments. And you also have to assert that if you were evicted, you would likely become homeless, or you would have to move in and live with other people. So the new order has the same criteria for a covered person, but it adds the criteria that the individual has to reside in a U.S. county that is experiencing substantial or high rates of community transmission, or high rates of transmissions of COVID-19. And so how do you check whether you live in a county or city or locality where there are high or substantial rates of transmission? So the CDC has a website, a COVID data tracker website, where you can go and you can check that. You can both check it in the current moment, and you can look back in time and see what the rates have been, you know, going back about a month or so. All counties in South Carolina currently are in the high or substantial COVID transmission rate, so they all qualify under the order. So this is a screenshot of that data tracker tool that I took that covered up through August 2nd, and you can see there it's color coded. High transmission rates are in red, substantial transmission rates are in orange, moderate and low are in yellow and blue, and you can see that all South Carolina counties are red, except for at least as of August 2nd, you had 2 counties that were in orange. So again, they all qualify. Now the moratorium might end in a particular county if transmission rates decrease below a substantial rate for at least 14 consecutive days. And then the county will be exempted from the moratorium until transmission rates are again substantial or high. And of course, the order will end October 3rd. So this is just an example of how you can look back over time and see, all right, what have transmission rates been over the past 14 days, 2 weeks. So this is a screenshot from that same data tracker website, and there's a time lapse icon. And if you click this green time lapse button, it'll open up this image here, and you can click this drop down arrow and you can select different dates or points in time. So looking at July 2nd, you can see that all the counties were in blue or yellow, so low to moderate. And you can use that to see what the transmission rates have been in a particular county over the last 14 days. Another question that comes up, are people who have already submitted a declaration required to submit the new CDC declaration? There's a portion of the order that says if you have submitted a declaration under a previous order and all that information still remains accurate, You're not required to submit a new one. However, the new order also says that eligibility for protection will be based on the terms of this particular order. So if you have to certify that you live in a county that has the high or substantial transmission rates, the previous declarations did not have that certification. So it's probably advisable to submit a new certification if you still qualify for it. The declaration is not required to be on CDC's official form, but it has to have all of the certifications that are required to identify a person as a covered person. And that declaration must be, it can be printed out from the CDC's website and signed and then delivered to the landlord. And that's how the declaration takes effect. What are the penalties for violating on both sides, I guess, the order, or for falsely certifying? For a landlord who violates the CDC's order, it provides for penalties of up to $100,000 to $250,000 per person, and then $200,000 to $500,000 if you're dealing with an organization like a company, LLC. That. A tenant has to sign the declaration under penalty of perjury, which means that a tenant can be liable for false or misleading statements or omissions. And perjury, of course, is the willful telling of an untruth after having taken an oath or affirmation. And the order also indicates that the landlord is allowed to challenge the truthfulness of the tenant's declaration in court. So that should be a caution to just, signing the declaration without really knowing or assessing whether it applies to you. There's also some legal uncertainty. The title of this was, that the order might last until August 3rd. So there's a case that was started under some previous orders, and the Alabama Association of Realtors has now asked the U.S. District Court for Columbia to basically kill the new moratorium. And the DOJ responded on Friday. I believe arguments were held on that motion yesterday or today. And the motion is largely based on some signaling that the Supreme Court did when it declined to hear a case or take up an issue about the stay of the CDC's moratorium. But the Supreme Court kind of signaled there that we're only not taking this up because it's going to expire in a month on July 31st. Well, now that it's been extended, the Association of Realtors believes that the district court will likely strike it down, or at least that's what they've asked the court to do. So there's a little bit of legal uncertainty there. Now, of course, there's another goal of the CDC moratorium besides preventing the spread of COVID, and that's rental assistance. And the folks with Guidehouse are going to walk you through the SCStay Plus application, but I just wanted to alert you to some other resources. So the CFPB has put together, well, of course, it's not pulling up. This link would have taken us to the CFPB's website. If you Google Consumer Financial Protection Bureau or CFPB Rental Assistance Tracker, it'll take you to a website which has links to all 8 emergency rental assistance programs in South Carolina. So SCStay Plus covers most of the state, but it doesn't cover Anderson, Berkeley, Charleston, Greenville, Horry, or Richland counties. And so, or Spartanburg County, I left Spartanburg off there. So you'd have to go through those particular counties to apply for assistance in those counties. And this link, which it worked when we tested it before the presentation, and now it's not. But it pulls up a link to where you can access the links to all of those counties. And the criteria for all of these programs should be largely the same because they're all under the Treasury's Emergency Rental Assistance Program. So they all follow generally the same guidelines. South Carolina Legal Services also has a link on its webpage. I won't try this one because it's not going to work either. But if you go to sclegal.org, we have a rental assistance chart where you can look at non-emergency rental assistance programs. So nonprofits and places that might have rental assistance outside of either the CARES Act or the emergency rental assistance, outside of COVID related funding, let's say. And so we have that available on our website. And, and at this point, I will turn it over to Renee and to Guidehouse.
Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon again. I'm Renee Long, and I'm the Communications and Outreach Director with SC Housing, and I'm here to share some exciting news with you about our SCStay Plus Emergency Rental Assistance Program that offers help for families who are hurting, who've experienced a COVID-19 or pandemic-related financial hardship. Through our program, we have $272 million in federal funds available to administer in the state. So I think the most important thing I want to say is that funds are available to help families and to help them recover from the financial hardship and to get back on track. The second thing I would like to say is that, as Mark indicated, our program covers 39 counties. So we're a state operated program, but it's very important that we operate under a no wrong door approach. So if you go to our website, or if someone is from another county, we have reached out to those other emergency rental assistance programs to make sure that we have a seamless kind of coordination mechanism in place so that it is a no wrong door for families who may come to us from various parts of the state. But again, our program only services 39 counties, which we will go over, and that basically is most of the state except for the 7 counties that have been referenced. One of the things that I think is really important, you'll hear from my colleagues who are part of our grant management organization, Ryan Mullen and Malcolm Clark, but this is very much a state administered program. It's a state administered in the sense that our legislators have given us a mandate that we want to get this funding out, and we'll get this funding out to help hurting families by September 30th of this year. It's very much a state administered program in the sense that while there's lots of flexibility, we wanted to make sure that the program is a good fit for South Carolina. So we also have an advisory panel that's comprised of various partners that the legislature have identified, our utility partners, economic development organizations, advocates, to make sure that we're constantly looking at the program and making sure that we tweak it to make it a right fit for South Carolina so that these funds can get out quickly and that we can expedite the process, the application process. One of the things that you're going to see, we talked about the pandemic being very unprecedented in terms of its impact, the long-lasting impact, and the hardship. So therefore, it is required that the federal government and government, quite frankly, at all levels, rethink how we administer these programs. So you'll see lots of flexibility in the emergency rental assistance programs, and our goal is to take advantage of all of the flexibility that the U.S. Department of Treasury has provided so that states can get these funds out quickly. Through the presentation, you will hear terms like self-attestation or self-certification. What that basically means is that we realize that it can really take a lot of time for families who are hurting to get certain documentation together. And so in places where it's appropriate, that the federal government is allowing us to basically, the family or the individual can just certify that they meet that particular requirement and move forward in the application process. What I would also say is that at the end of the presentation, if you have any additional questions, you can always go to schousing.com and click on the SCStay Plus banner for more information. Or if you are out there, we're looking for help in getting the word out. We want these families to get support, and we recognize that that support comes in formal and informal ways in the community. So if you're part of a community organization that would like for us to partner with you in terms of a presentation or any other way to help families in your communities connect with this program, please email us at outreach@schousing.com. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ryan and Malcolm. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for just allowing us to talk to you a little bit about the SCStay Plus program. Thank you very much, Renee, and the organizers today for giving us the time to walk through this with you all. I am sharing my screen, and we're going to basically walk through an overview of the SCStay Plus program. to give you all a good idea of sort of how this program functions, what's available, how people are eligible, and give a very, very high level overview of the application process. Of course, if there are questions, please, again, put that into the chat, and we will figure out a way to get you the proper response. And again, my name is Malcolm Clark. I'm a senior consultant here at Guidehouse, and I'll be joined by Ryan Mullen, who is an associate director here as well. So what is SCStay Plus? I know both Renee and Mark have gone through this, but it's a $272 million federally funded program to provide South Carolina households with support with past due rent and utilities. The way that this program works is that it gives support for past due rent and utilities up to for up to 12 months backwards, starting with March 2020. Now, these funds are made available through the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021, and it differs from an earlier program, SCStay, which was for mortgage and rent assistance. Again, please keep in mind that there are differences between this, and we will talk about it a little bit later. So again, what's available? Wanted to put together this high-level graphic for everyone to really see, show what's out there through the program. So first is for past due rent. Again, that's 12 months of that rent or arrears brought about by COVID-19 related financial instability. The second item has to do with future rent. Applicants can receive up to 3 months of additional rental assistance to help maintain housing stability. And then 3, we also support utility energy costs. So anyone who has arrears or past due rent, if you will, or not rent, but utilities owed, we can support that as well. And now that information is paid directly to the utility companies to support that. In addition to those 3 items that we've introduced, we also cover other expenses. So this includes people who might not have a lease or had to leave their homes for some reason. So those other housing expenses that are covered include fees, including late fees or court fees or other legal costs related to an eviction or having to leave your home, moving costs, so supplies to move, like a moving truck or boxes, storage fees and mover fees, hotel and motel expenses that are reimbursed to the applicant if a temporary stay was required in between permanent homes, and moving costs. So security deposits, first month and last month's rent, application fees, and any of those items that are required or are typical as part of the application process of securing a new rental unit. So moving along in terms of who should apply, this talks a little bit about program eligibility. One of the primary drivers of this is that the household has to be obligated to pay rent on a residential dwelling or have previously paid rent and have been displaced. In addition, for the eligibility criteria, an individual in the household has to have qualified for unemployment benefits, have experienced reduction in household income, incurred significant costs, or experienced some other financial hardship directly or indirectly due to COVID-19 outbreak. In addition, also people are eligible if they can demonstrate a risk of experiencing homelessness or housing instability. And our final point here is that the household income is at or below 80% of the area median income. And I also want to say that we also prioritize applicants or applications that are at 50% or below because people who are really, really need the support. I know this was mentioned earlier, but just to quickly review, the program does not cover rent and utilities for those living in Anderson, Berkeley, Charleston, Greenville, Horry, Richland, and Spartanburg. And those individuals who reside in those areas are really encouraged to contact their county's housing office for rental assistance. Additionally, though, we have some of those resources or contact details on the SC Housing website. So if you go there, you go to the SCStay Plus landing page, you can see more links about the rental assistance programs in these various areas. So who should apply? This is just, again, a graphic to give an overview of what I've already introduced. So we also have the documentation requirements. I believe Renee mentioned it earlier, but these are becoming more relaxed in line with federal guidance to help people get through the application process easier. So as of July 2020, applicants will no longer be required to provide proof of experiencing homelessness or housing instability or proof of household income instability. Applicants are now able to simply attest to these requirements as part of the standard application process. So again, that's really, really great. We really don't want people having to pull from a bunch of different places to get this information, and now it's streamlined as part of the application process. But something that we also want to make note of is that we have widened the scope of acceptable documentation for the income verification component. So now we can accept information and employment information from the South Carolina Department of Employment and Workforce, as well as other assistance programs, such as the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, SNAP, EBT, and so on. And this is something that we wanted to sort of put together to make it easier for folks to understand what they absolutely need to verify their eligibility for the program and what's required of them. So we really need, for the first thing, it's personal identification. And there are various acceptable forms of identification that are listed here and on the website. It's anything from a driver's license, state ID, birth certificate, passport, military ID, and so on and so forth, to really show that that person is who they say they are. In addition to that, we have proof of having a lease. So that includes a current lease, an expired lease, and something that's sort of new for the program is something called the landlord-tenant agreement, where essentially if a person does not have any of those sort of more formal avenues of having a lease, if you will, they can essentially sign a document that shows the amount that's owed by month, and that's in coordination with their landlord if possible. So that's good too, because we know people have different housing arrangements that might not fit what's written here. And then in addition to that, we also have proof of income. And I believe I mentioned that we sort of verify income using some of that state and federal assistance programs. So that's fine. And that happens through specific zip codes. So if you're a person that resides in a zip code that's sort of categorized as being low income, this verification essentially happens on the back end. But in addition to that, applicants can also provide things sort of like a pay stub or some other type of benefit letter to show what's going. And if you look into the chat, you can see that for the personal identification, I'm being told that it's important to emphasize that we also accept foreign or domestic passports that are acceptable, and people are eligible regardless of their immigration status. So just want to make sure that information is sort of shared out here as well. So how do you apply? Now, folks can really, the easiest way for folks to really take advantage of the program is to visit the SC Housing website. We have the link here, and of course we'll share it more broadly. But on the SC Housing website, you can go to the SCStay Plus landing page that essentially takes you to the online portal. In addition to that, questions can be answered by calling our call center. We have two numbers here, a direct line and a toll-free number. We've also recently extended our hours to better serve the community, so we run from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. I also want to say too, if you're a person who requires more assistance with working through the application, people can actually apply through the call center. So call, make that known, have some of that information that we've sort of shared thus far available, and you can submit your application that way. So that's great too. So let's see, and we have a list of frequently asked questions for both renters and landlords, and that can be viewed on the online application portal. And the instruction, the direction on how to get there can be found at the bottom of this slide. So how can I help? One thing that we also wanted to really show here is that we want to bring folks into this process because we know that for members of our community and our neighbors, it's really helpful to sometimes have help from a familiar face. So if you have the capacity or interest, want people to be able to sort of assist with the application process by really understanding some of those typical issues and challenges and help people sort of address some general concerns, and also help spread the word too. Applicants to sort of share our materials, we can be found on various social media platforms, Facebook and Twitter, and so on and so forth. And we also have a community outreach toolkit on our website or on the SCStay Plus landing page, that fully details and has a bunch of different assets that you can use to sort of share everything that we've been talking about thus far. And we also have some contact us information. I brought up some of this information earlier. We have a direct line, we have a toll-free line. You can also email us at scstayplus@schousing.com. If you have a question on a specific application, please ensure that you just provide your application ID number, which a person gets after they complete the application process. But I know that this was a lot of information, and there may be questions. So again, please feel free to add those questions in the chat, or we can share our contact information after this conversation so that you can contact us directly with any questions. One thing that I also want to note too is that I really want to do a really quick high-level overview of the application process because I really want people to at least have some familiarity of what they're looking at. So you can access the application through schousing.com, and you can begin the application by you're basically greeted on this page, and you basically start by clicking step 1. Applicants will then be required to more or less fill out all the required or requested personal information on all 8 pages of the application. Now, when we say 8 pages, I know it sounds like a lot, but it's very straightforward, and it's designed to help you work through it as easy as possible. So you'll see on this sort of first page, which requests applicant information, you have things sort of like an applicant's name, your date of birth, address, county, email, and so on and so forth. In addition, as you sort of work through the process, you've given more responses, and you'll be able to press next to navigate through the pages 2 through 5 to help determine program eligibility. So as part of this program, that is not only just for rent, but also for utilities as well. And if an applicant is behind on utility payments, make sure you select yes on page 6 to apply for utility assistance. By clicking that, you'll be given various additional prompts, if you will, to really show, to demonstrate what you owe, what type of utility you're looking for assistance with, and more. And I got ahead of myself here, but this is basically what you would see. If you select all those items, you're given an opportunity to fill in the company, the utility company that's appropriate, and you give your account number and the amount owed, and then we take it from there. And then page 7 is just to sort of show or confirm that the person hasn't received essentially a duplication of benefits, and ensure that the what assistance has sort of been captured in the past. And then on page 8, we have the applicant certification, where the applicant essentially certifies that the information is truthful and complete, and that type of information. Unfortunately, at this time, applications cannot be saved, so it has to be done in one session. So it's good to have that information that we shared earlier about the required information, so that you're able to run through this as quickly as possible. And please note, the application is not submitted until you press the submit button. You provide you check off the appropriate boxes, you sign your name, and then you press submit. And that's just a really important part. Otherwise, it'll time out and you'll have to start over. The second part of this, I know we spoke a little bit about the required documentation being more relaxed, if you will. But again, for something like the personal identification, applicants will still need to submit their ID, if you will, or upload their ID to the portal. So once you receive that application ID from completing the, after completing the application, you basically are able to select what piece of information you're uploading. You select the documentation here, you select the correct document, and you push that forward. And by providing your application ID, it gets attached directly to your account. And one thing that I also want to note too is that this can actually be accessed on a mobile device. So fully recognizing that some people might not have access to something like a scanner or a fax machine or what have you, by using navigating to the online application portal through your mobile device, you'll be able to submit this information directly there. And the mobile device online version, if you will, is designed for is responsive, so it looks as it should on a mobile device. And one more component that I think I want to add right here is that in some cases, landlords and owners can submit their documentation here as well. And in terms of required owner documentation, there are some pieces of documentation that are required to complete the SCStay application process. So that'll include something like their name, address, and tax ID or social security number, completed IRS form, a W-9 or ACH payment, so it can be paid faster, if you will, as a direct deposit, and then proof of ownership. And then another good point that I also want to bring up, I think you can see it at the top of this website, is that there is an owner referral form that can be used to help connect tenants with the program. So a person who, if a landlord has tenants and they want to sort of share information about their program, they can also do that, but they can also refer them directly, and our team will connect with the relevant parties to get that information in front of people. I got ahead of myself again, but again, there is a mobile version, and this walks through how to leverage the mobile portion of the application, especially when it comes to uploading documentation. The same process that we discussed, it just looks a little bit different because on a mobile device. And we have some frequently asked questions too, which sort of gives an overview of the types of support that's provided, how long will it take to receive program funds, if a landlord needs to be involved. And of course, we can share this information more broadly, but this is just intended to be used as a reference sheet for folks who are helping people through the application process. So for example, we recognize that sometimes it might not be possible to work with a landlord or an apartment owner. And if that's the case, we still encourage people to apply and then call our call center, where a representative will help them work towards supporting that tenant directly. And just some technical background, technical support, frequently asked questions as well. But I also want to note that additional frequently asked questions that are a bit more thorough can be accessed in the application portal. So if we go back to that page, you can sort of see it's up at the top of that page. And I think that is it from my end. I again want to thank you all for the time. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And again, just want to thank everyone. So I'll pass it back to Mark, but of course, if there are questions, please feel free to add them to the chat and we will get responses to you where we can. Thank you all.
Thanks for that, Malcolm. That was excellent information. And so we're going to wrap things up here. Let's see here. Show screen. There we go. All right. Let's see. We'll get to the final screen so you can. Oh, that didn't work. Okay.
Mark, while you're, this is Susan, while you're getting to that final slide, we do have, I think, maybe a few minutes for questions, and we do have several questions in the question box. So hopefully we can answer those today. One of the questions is asking, so the substantial loss of household income doesn't have to be specifically COVID related. Will they be required to provide documentation that their reduced income was due to COVID? And I think you said it has to be direct or indirect. So what's the answer?
Well, for the purposes of the CDC's moratorium, it does not have to be COVID related. You may have to, you're not required to provide any proof of that drop in income on the front end. So at the point in time where you're signing the declaration saying I've had a drop in income, all you have to do is attest to that. On the back end, if you end up in court, the order does say that the landlord might be able to challenge or has the authority to challenge the accuracy of the certification. So you would need proof at that point. Now for that,
I'll just
SCStay.
Yeah, just to follow up there, it's correct that at this point, as you complete your application to SCStay Plus, you are self-attesting just by completing the application that you have suffered a COVID hardship, and also that you're at risk of experiencing homelessness or housing instability as a result of COVID. And as you go through the application, there's a final page at the end where you sign off on a number of certifications that, you know, the income information you gave is accurate, that all the information included is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, kind of the usual things. But among those is self-attesting that you've experienced a hardship. And so for that reason, the state has changed its requirements so that you do not need to submit documentation to that effect, that your certification is enough.
Okay, great. And that was, I guess, regarding the declaration that Mark talked about earlier as well. Okay, so then another question from Hannah, just to clarify, these funds do not apply to Spartanburg County, correct?
Spartanburg County has its own program at this time.
Right.
Okay. And then with the income verification, is that gross income or net income?
I mean, in this case, it would be gross. We accept, there are a variety of means you can use to show income. You can provide wages or other kinds of pay stubs. You can provide a W-2. I should say not a W-2, I'm confusing with it. You should be able to provide a 1040, a tax return. And you can also kind of test out with categorical eligibility. And that was what Malcolm had been explaining earlier. If you have been enrolled in TANF or SNAP or supplemental security income or been on unemployment during COVID, and you can show us documentation to that effect, then that also qualifies you for income.
And let me just follow up with that. You know, I've had a lot of experience helping people put together loss mitigation applications for foreclosure cases. You know, you have to document income in those kind of situations as well. And I've had situations where a client might be self-employed, and I had to help the client put together a profit and loss statement for the last, you know, let's say 6 months or whatever the bank wanted in that case. So, you know, there might be creative solutions if the tenant doesn't even have any of the things that Ryan has just mentioned.
That's correct. Yeah, that the questions around documentation should not stop someone from applying. Our team is available, and our job is to help eligible applicants get the money that they deserve through this program. And so we'll be able to work with tenants to help them with their documentation. I guess that's a really good blanket statement for all of this, is that, like, our goal here, and part of the reason we were really excited to join for this call, is that we want to encourage everyone who can possibly apply to apply for this money. There's a large pool of it. We're trying to give as much of it out as we can. And so we really want to turn nobody away from this program.
You're not looking to disqualify people. You're looking to make sure that they are eligible and that they have all the necessary information to get that funding that they're entitled to. So that's right. I love that blanket statement that really says it all. So thank you for that, Ryan. And then finally, there is one question that asks, is there a way we can get a copy of today's content? The recording of today's presentation will be on our YouTube channel at South Carolina Legal Services, and we will also link to all the information that has been provided today, the slides and any appropriate website links, the FAQs and those kinds of things will be available in the description below. So that should be everything you need. Now, I think that wraps it up. And I first want to thank our presenters today for such an excellent presentation, and one that is definitely much needed right now. So we do appreciate all of you panelists jumping in with this topic so quickly for us. Mark, Ryan, Malcolm, and Renee, thank you all so much. Now for the audience, if you found this helpful, and I'm sure you did, and you know it's going to be helpful to others. So as I mentioned, our YouTube channel, it will be there. If you can go there and share the broadcast with other people, you can, like and subscribe to that YouTube channel, because I'm sure we'll be having follow-up information that we'll be posting. We do want as many people as possible to get this important information. So, and while you're there, be sure to sign up for notifications, because each week we post a new episode of Level Up Law. So although the topic that we're talking about today is the most important one at this moment here in South Carolina, there are other things going on too. And so we do want you to be sure and get all that information. You can go to our Level Up Law playlist on that YouTube channel, and I think there's upwards of 54 presentations there at this point, so definitely go do that. Now, right now, you'll see on the screen the various ways that you can contact us here at Legal Services to get help with these issues and with others, of course, but also how to access that social media that I was talking about, how to connect to us for an online intake to get legal representation, and then all the other resources that we have on this and other legal topics here at South Carolina Legal Services. So we always want to share that information with you. I think we may have some other questions, but we'll try to follow up with answering some of those and link to that at the YouTube video. So just go there in the next 24 hours or so, and you should be able to get all the information that you need. So that is it for today. I want you to be sure to tune in next week for another episode of Level Up Law on Tuesday at noon. We'll be talking about the things that can go wrong in a bankruptcy if you don't have a lawyer representing you throughout your bankruptcy case. So that promises to be an interesting topic as well. So again, thanks to our presenters, and thanks to all of you for tuning in today on Level Up Law. That concludes today's webinar.